I am 100 years old, and I want you to listen carefully, not because I am old, but because I have already walked through the end of a long, complicated journey that most of you are still only beginning to understand. And if you truly hear me, you might be able to avoid the mistakes that cost so many of us precious, irreplaceable moments. The truth I have learned over a century of living, loving, losing, and watching the world transform countless times is both painfully simple and profoundly difficult to accept. Almost everything we are taught about life from parents, from teachers, from self-help books is incomplete because it teaches us about grand achievements, about visible milestones, about success and failure, but it fails to warn us about the slow, silent losses, the ordinary, everyday moments that slip by unnoticed while we are distracted, thinking we have forever, the days we wasted rushing, the words we did not say, the embraces we cut short, the laughter we postponed. All of it accumulates into a quiet grief that most of us never recognize until it is too late. And I know this because I have lived long enough to bury friends, children, lovers, and every person I held close. And each time someone I loved disappeared from my life, the weight of all the unattended, unappreciated, unobserved moments hit me like a storm, teaching me again and again that presence, the simple act of truly being there, is more valuable than any accomplishment, more irreplaceable than wealth, more lasting than fame. Yet it is the one thing people constantly trade away for distractions, for worry, for trivial pursuits that will not matter in 5 years, 10 years, or even 20. I remember vividly the day that first shattered my illusions, the ordinary Friday in 1955, when I was 33, waiting in my small kitchen for my husband Robert to return from the steel mill, anticipating our usual weekend plans to dance and laugh together, believing without a doubt that there would be many more such evenings. And then the call came: an accident at the mill. Quick, sudden, irreversibly, and in that instant, the world split into before and after. And I realized that everything I had assumed to be guaranteed, everything I had postponed until later, was suddenly gone. And that night, sitting at our kitchen table with the quiet echo of loss all around me, I made a promise to myself, a promise to live intentionally, to love openly, to never delay joy. And yet, even with that promise, even with the depth of pain coursing through me, I would learn that human nature is fragile, that grief fades and routine returns, that the mind forgets, and that without vigilance, we fall back into the trap of believing we have time when we almost never do. I remarried. I loved again. I embraced my children and told them I loved them. Yet life, as it always does, distracted me with work, responsibilities, the ordinary chores and noise of living, and slowly, imperceptibly, I began to believe once more that I had time, and that illusion cost me countless precious moments, moments that will never return, moments I can only remember with a mixture of warmth and regret. Over the decades, I have learned that the tragedy of life is not the mistakes we make that change the course of our journey in obvious ways. It is the small, almost invisible choices, the seconds we waste being elsewhere mentally, while physically present, the mornings we are impatient, the afternoons we are distracted, the evenings we spend staring at trivial worries instead of embracing the people we love. And these are the moments that accumulate into true sorrow, because they are irretrievable, because they define the texture of a life fully lived or a life sleepwalked through. My second husband Charles taught me so many lessons, not through grand gestures but through ordinary days, the quiet nights when I could have joined him on a walk but said I was busy, the conversations I could have had but postponed because the children needed attention or chores were pressing, the gentle moments of laughter I could have shared if I had stopped worrying about everything else. And looking back, it is these moments, not the arguments or the struggles, not the material triumphs or failures, that I regret most, because they represent a presence I chose to withhold, a love I allowed to remain half-offered. And as I lived into my 70s, 80s, and 90s, burying friends and family, watching the world around me change in ways I never anticipated, I understood that grief is not only the absence of people but also the absence of attentiveness while they were still here, and that every unspoken word, every interrupted hug, every hurried meal without conversation, every day spent prioritizing work, fear, or convenience over love, leaves a lasting mark on the soul, a scar that remains long after the people are gone. When my son William died in 1987 at the age of 45, I sat at his hospital bedside, holding his hand, feeling the weight of all those moments I had squandered, all the times I told myself I had enough time to say I love you, all the ordinary moments I believed could be postponed. And in that room, in the quiet hum of machines and the faint smell of antiseptic, I realized that nothing in life truly replaces presence. Nothing, not wealth, not accomplishments, not fame, not success, nothing, except the simple, unremarkable act of truly being there, listening, caring, noticing, responding. I realized that every relationship, every bond, every love we hold, depends on attentiveness. And when attentiveness fades, when we rely on later, we begin to lose those we love even before death claims them. And so, over the decades, I have watched the world with the eyes of someone who has learned the hard way, noting how young people scroll through their phones while loved ones sit silently beside them, how they promise to call later, visit later, reconnect later, travel later, start living later, and how they trade irreplaceable moments for distractions that will leave no imprint. And I feel the urgency of it all, because I know that later never comes the way we imagine it will, because the world is impermanent, because the people we love will not always be here, because in the end, what remains are the moments when we truly chose presence over everything else. And these are the moments that define life itself. These quiet, uncelebrated moments that we can often overlook. These Tuesday afternoons spent being patient. Saturday mornings making pancakes with laughter unhurried. A simple walk where we listen instead of planning what to say next. These are the moments that matter. And they are available to you now if you choose them. If you fight for them, if you refuse to be distracted by the false urgency of unimportant things, if you remember, over and over again, to return to attention, return to love, return to presence. My own life, spanning 100 years, has been a testament to this truth. And even now, as my body slows and my energy wanes, I can feel the consequences of the moments I let slip by, the opportunities I did not seize, the love I withheld for trivial reasons. And yet I am determined to leave this message for you, to give you what I learned far too late, to tell you that the greatest regret in life is not the big failures but the small absences, the inattention, the sleepwalking through our own lives while the people we love quietly slip away. And so I urge you, with every ounce of energy left in this old body, to pause, to look around, to notice, to call, to touch, to listen, to be fully present, because these ordinary, overlooked, unremarkable moments are the ones that will matter long after everything else fades. And if you take nothing else from my century of living, take this: love openly, attend fully, be present now, because the later you assume exists is an illusion, and nothing can replace the act of being fully there with the ones you love. I have lived a full century, and now as my body slows and my mind drifts more easily into reflection, I want you to understand something that I have learned only through decades of observation, loss, and hard-earned experience. Life is not measured by the grand moments that make the stories or the milestones that everyone applauds, but by the quiet, unremarkable seconds in which we are fully present and attentive. And yet, for most of us, those moments are the first to slip away because we assume that later will always arrive, that there will always be another chance to say I love you, another opportunity to listen, another afternoon to embrace someone fully. But the cruel reality is that later is often an illusion, a promise we give ourselves that rarely comes to fruition. And so I implore you, as someone who has seen friends, lovers, children, and entire generations pass, to recognize that the greatest tragedy in life is not death itself, nor the large mistakes we may make, but the accumulation of unnoticed, unlit, unattended moments that quietly erode the richness of existence. Because when someone you love is gone, it is not the dramatic loss that haunts you. It is the absence of the ordinary, the Tuesdays you spent distracted, the Saturdays when you were too busy to make pancakes, the walks you postponed, the conversations you let fade into background noise, the hugs cut short, the patience withheld, the times you were present physically but absent in mind. All of these moments form the true measure of what was lost. And if you do not attend to them while you can, they vanish irretrievably, leaving behind only memory and regret. I have buried husbands, children, friends, and colleagues, and I have felt the sharp sting of those memories over and over, each recollection reminding me of opportunities missed, words left unsaid, and time taken for granted. And the lesson that I have learned, painfully and slowly, is that the act of presence, of paying attention, of choosing to prioritize love, connection, and mindfulness over distraction and convenience, is the single most important investment we can make in our own lives, because wealth, achievements, and status may fade, but the impression we leave on others and the depth of our own lived experience is created in these ordinary, overlooked moments. I want you to understand that even with the knowledge I gained at 33, when tragedy first struck me and I realized how fleeting life truly is, I still faltered. I still allowed busyness, routine, and superficial concerns to pull me away from the people I loved. And I am honest with you about this because it is the reality of being human. Knowledge alone does not create presence. Vigilance and intention do, and it requires a constant effort to return, again and again, to what truly matters, to notice, to listen, to care, to choose presence over distraction, to choose love over convenience, to engage fully with each fleeting moment as if it were the most important thing you will ever do. Because in truth, it might be. I watched generations of my family grow, and I have seen young people, like my own great-great-granddaughter Sophie, lost in her phone, assuming that these moments with elders, with loved ones, with history and experience, will always be available to her later. And yet those moments, like all moments, are finite, irreplaceable, and will never return once gone. And when she grows older, she will remember the time she could have been present but was not, and she will feel that quiet sting of absence, the same way I have felt it through decades of life. And this is why I urge you not to make the same mistake, to wait for later, to assume time is endless, to treat those you love as though they will always be there, because someday, inevitably, they will not, and the realization will come too late if you do not act now. The richness of life is found not in accolades, not in wealth, not in the grand adventures or the conspicuous achievements, but in the depth of ordinary, intimate moments, the unnoticed gestures, the soft words, the patient listening, the hand held a moment longer, the full attention given, without distraction. And these are the moments that will define your life when everything else has faded. These are the moments you will carry in memory, in soul, in the quiet corners of your mind when the world has grown distant and your loved ones are gone. And therefore, the measure of a life fully lived is the cumulative attention, care, and love present in each of these seemingly small, unremarkable, and everyday acts. I have made many mistakes, and I have learned from them, but the one lesson I wish I had learned sooner, the lesson I carry now as my greatest truth at the age of 100, is that awareness must be continually practiced, presence must be intentionally chosen, and love must be actively expressed. Because if we allow ourselves to drift, to forget, to postpone, we gradually lose not just others but also ourselves. And so I urge you, wherever you are, whoever you love, do not postpone listening, do not postpone embracing, do not postpone noticing, do not postpone being fully there. For each moment squandered is a moment you cannot recover. Do not assume another opportunity, another time, another chance, because even with all the years I have lived, the pain of what was unattended, the grief of what was unnoticed, the absence of what could have been cherished, weighs on me daily. And I want you to avoid that weight by acting now, by choosing presence, by holding your family, your friends, your loved ones, close, not just physically but mentally, emotionally, attentively, and by doing so, you create a life rich with connection, meaning, and depth that cannot be measured by material gains or societal approval, only by the resonance of your attention and the warmth of your love. And this is why, at the end of a century, I can tell you with certainty that the most important truth of life is not what we achieve, not what we accumulate, not what we conquer, but how deeply and fully we are present in the fleeting moments we are given. And the great privilege of being alive is the ability to return over and over to these moments, to notice, to attend, to love, to be, not perfectly, but persistently, to fight against distraction, against hurry, against false urgencies, and to choose the richness of presence over the illusion of later, because later, as I have learned too late, almost never comes. And if you take nothing else from my century of living, take this: cherish every ordinary, unremarkable moment, pay attention, return to love, return to presence, return to life itself, because these are the true treasures of existence, and they are available to you now, in this moment, if you choose them, and nothing else. No achievement, no money, no status, no dollar can ever replace the value of being fully, attentively, lovingly present with the ones you care about while they are here, while you are here, while now is still now. Because this truth, learned over a century, and with the cost of countless lost moments, is the one gift I leave to you while you still have the time to use it. And remember, later never comes. Asterisk,